All right, unbiased. There was a gentleman that, well, let's put it like this. Let's backtrack. All right. I did a video talking about Mikey Garcia and Manny Pacquiao and Demetrius Johnson, and there were some people who said I was really unbiased, and it was, really great that I was so unbiased. I want to talk about how to be an unbiased commentator. All right. I want to talk about that. Because there were a lot of people who love it when I say, well, Mikey Garcia really stepped up to the plate. By the way, he did. There were a lot of people who might like me saying, and I haven't said it so far, but that Canelo Alvarez has shown, again, great Mexican pride in stepping up and fighting Danny Jacobs. There were people who love to hear that, and they say, Save Carmen, you're so unbiased. There are then people who love to hear me say Manny Pacquiao is a fighter of this generation, and they will say, oh, Save Carmen, you're so unbiased. And I understand what's going on there. Those quotes, those things that I say about Manny Pacquiao being a fighter of this generation, I absolutely believe and can prove it. Give a great philosophical argument as to why he's even a greater welterweight than Floyd Mayweather. And I will be doing a video showing why he's a greater welterweight than Floyd Mayweather. No matter how, the fact that Floyd Mayweather is undefeated really has nothing to do with the fact that Manny Pacquiao, in my opinion, is a greater welterweight and should go down in history as being a better welterweight than Floyd Mayweather Jr. Now, there are people who love to hear that, but at the same time, these individuals really don't know what it's like to be unbiased. Why? Because while they like that, they may not like the fact that it is a fact that the greatest fighters in the UFC are black. They may not like the fact that an individual said that Tyron Woodley, he was trying to be funny, and he was a white guy. I looked at his moniker. And I saw that he was white. He said that Tyron Woodley and Kamaru Usman should both be sent to Asia, using some kind of reference to Demetrius Johnson. Well, those people who say that I'm unbiased because I say nice things about Mikey Garcia, and I believe it from my heart, most people say I'm biased because I say great things about Manny Pacquiao at the same time won't like this next statement. And that is this. For those people for that guy who said that Tyron Woodley and Kamaru Usman should be sent to Asia, fact of the matter is that if you take all the black fighters out of the UFC, you will only have a league of robots. If you take all the black fighters out of the UFC, you will have a league of robots. That's it. Israel Adesanya, if you take them all, every black fighter, out of the UFC, the only white fighter that will be left that has the skills of black fighters is T.J. Dillashaw. All other white fighters do not have the skills of the black fighters in the UFC. Now, that statement is true, but it quite likely pissed off a lot of people who praise me when I say Manny Pacquiao, and I believe it, that Manny Pacquiao is a better welterweight than Floyd Mayweather. Right? Those same people, because I said if you take every black fighter out of the UFC, the only white fighter, the only fighter left that has the skills of the best black fighters is T.J. Dillashaw. Everyone else, Darren Till, Colby Covington, they're robots. That's it. I don't care what other white fighter. There's no white fighters in the UFC who have the skills of the black fighters, who has the creativity of the black fighters, right? Other than T.J. Dillashaw. Now, a lot of you feel butthurt. A lot of you are upset. Maybe I shouldn't use that language. Yeah. But many of you are upset that I said that. But you praise me for talking about Mikey Garcia in a way that I believe, but you do that. In other words, one of the reasons why people are so biased is because they don't have it in them to tell the truth. And the reason why I am an unbiased commentator is because I recognize my bias And because I recognize my bias, I'm able to have some control over it. So when we look at people, for example, like Ray Arcel. Ray Arcel, to me, is the greatest boxing trainer that ever lived. Greatest boxing trainer that ever lived. Now, a white person will look and say, "You're so unbiased. We just love you." Why? Because I said the greatest trainer in the history of boxing is Ray Arcel. And I believe he is. He was a trainer of Benny Leonard. He was a trainer of Ezra Charles. He was a trainer of Roberto Duran. Now, in Ezra Charles, you have the greatest light heavyweight that ever lived. And Roberto Duran, if those who don't think Roberto Duran is the greatest lightweight that ever lived, believe Benny Leonard was the greatest lightweight that ever lived. So we have one trainer who taught the number 1 and number 2 greatest lightweights that ever lived. Greatest, not one of the greatest, but the 2 greatest lightweights that ever lived, right? And then we have the same trainer who taught the greatest light heavyweight that ever lived. Okay? Now, I agree. And Ike Williams is third as far as, and very underrated. The lightweight Sugar Ray Robinson, they called him. But Ray Arcel didn't train him. When we look at Roberto Duran, Benny Leonard, Ezra Charles, and a host of others. But just those 3 alone make him, in my opinion, the greatest trainer that ever lived. Now, there are white people that will say, bravo, bravo. But when I say Cus D'Amato was not the greatest trainer that ever lived. And that you would not be talking about Cus D'Amato if it was not for Mike Tyson. Well, those same white people that say, bravo, then all of a sudden want to send me death threats because I don't say Cus D'Amato was the greatest trainer that ever lived, which he is not. I believe Ray Arcel is. So, the only way to be unbiased is for you to recognize your biases, recognize your tendency to be biased, recognize how not only your tendency to be biased, but second, to recognize how you value your own opinion. Many of us are so attached to our own opinion, we're unable to move from that opinion, even when we're shown facts that prove our opinion to be wrong. So we look at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I used to think that Floyd Mayweather fans, right, predominantly black, were those people who were in the most denial when it came down to the martial arts, or a arts that was supposed to be martial. Well, they're not the worst. The worst are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fanatics. They are worse than Floyd Mayweather fans. And just like Floyd Mayweather fanatics, the majority are black, the majority of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fanatics are white. From America. Not necessarily the UK, but from America. They are the most in denial group in the history of martial arts. In martial arts today, there is no more idiotic group than the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu sport fanatics. I'll tell you how. And this shows how biased they are, in spite of evidence being shown that they're completely wrong. Royce Gracie says that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu should not have weight classes. It is essentially a martial art, and sport Jiu-Jitsu and you know, all these different kind of guards are bad for self-defense Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? Okay. These people, these practitioners of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came into my forums and said Royce Gracie was wrong. Okay, I'm going to save my comment for that. Rickson Gracie, in his tournaments, penalized people for getting into the guard when they could get to a more advantageous position. Rickson Gracie penalizes people for pulling guard when they could get to a top position. Well, there are people who came in to my forum and said, well, you know, Rickson Gracie is wrong. Henner Gracie said that if you're not learning how to defend against punches, right, then you're not really using BJJ like it was meant to be used, right? People came into that forum and said, Henner Gracie doesn't know what he's talking about. Roger Gracie, considered to be the greatest sport jiu-jitsu fighter ever. or practitioner, player, right? Not fighter, but the greatest sport Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner ever. GRACIE said, and I quote, 80% of sport Jiu-Jitsu is useless in the cage. And people still think Roger is wrong. So Rickson, Royce, Henner, and GRACIE, all four of them have defied what the sport jiu-jitsu the American sport jiu-jitsu community has said. And that American sport jiu-jitsu community, predominantly white, have said that every one of them is wrong. So what does that mean? That means you have a white purple belt from an affluent neighborhood who hasn't had a real scuffle in his life, saying that Royce, Rickson, Henner, and Roger don't know as much about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as they do. That's bias for you. Again, GRACIE says don't pull guard if you don't have to. GRACIE says you need to train slipping punches. GRACIE says 80% of sport jiu-jitsu would do no good in the cage. GRACIE says that you need to treat jiu-jitsu like a martial art and not a sport, right? Those four Gracies agree with me. I agree with them. They're telling the truth. And some white kid from the suburbs with a purple belt flopping around on his ass, right, thinks that they're wrong. Something's wrong up there. Something is wrong. So, where does that bias come from? Arrogance, some arrogance that is completely neurotic and idiotic. But that's the problem. People, in order to be unbiased, you have to recognize that you are biased. In order to be unbiased, you have to recognize how a person feels good about themselves and what tools they use to feel good about themselves. Right? And one of the tools people use to feel good about themselves, okay, is to have a negative opinion of other people. Once you do that, then you can be not only an unbiased commentator, but you can go a long way in being an unbiased individual. So, how am I? How do I do it? The way I do it is recognize that I'm black, I live in America, I grew up around a lot of racism. I grew up around a lot of Jim Crow. I generally like those people who look like me. I tend to have a hard time, believe it or not, giving credit to people who do not look like me. I love my people. I am proudly black. I am far more Malcolm X than I am anything else. But the fact of the matter is, I want to be a truthful person. I want to be all that I can be. And no matter how corny that is, it's true. I want to correct whatever flaw I have, rather than justify me having that flaw. There are too few people in the world like that. Many of those people are a lot of those people are in every walk of life, but they also are in the martial arts. So I am unbiased because I want to be unbiased. I am unbiased when I talk about the martial arts and other things because I don't want to be so needy as to me having to be biased. So biased that I really it's obvious to everyone except me that I am a complete and utter idiot, making a complete and utter fool of myself in order to protect my self-image. So, I want to thank those people that say I'm unbiased and credit me for my commentary. I will be doing commentary in the future, but that is actually showing you how you can be unbiased in your commentary, unbiased in your thought when it comes to the martial arts and when it comes to everything. Again, realize first and foremost that you are prone to being biased, and then and only then can you start to do something about your biases. And then at the same time, try to work on your own self-esteem, because when you have your own self-esteem, then you don't feel like you have to tear other people down in order to feel better about yourself. My name is Safe Carmen, walking encyclopedia of martial arts. See you next video.